Welcome to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Rey Descalso from Privada Wealth Management. In this podcast, we help you overcome financial worries and make sense of planning, investing, insurance, and banking. Join us for this journey as Rey draws from his expertise and interviews brilliant minds to help you enjoy life. The best is yet to come.
Hello and welcome to Return on Lifestyle with Rey Descalso from Privada Wealth Management. Good morning, Rey. How are you?
I am fantastic and amazing. Thank you for asking, Eric. How are you?
I am doing great. It is, we're getting toward the end of summer very, very quickly, and so the heat has kind of died down a bit. I'm enjoying that. I don't like hot, Rey. I don't do well in hot. That's just me.
No.
Yeah. So
I'm not built for heat. I live in Central Florida, not built for heat. Don't know what I'm air conditioning, though. Yeah, fantastic.
That's what I was built for. I think that's actually in my DNA is AC is in there somewhere. But speaking of hot, we got a hot topic today, and that is 4 habits of highly effective retirees. That's kind of the general topic we're talking about. So I want you to kind of introduce us. What are the 4 habits of highly effective retirees?
Yeah, the 4 habits. There are some things that I have picked up over the years, and I realize that these 4 habits, I see them time and time again. A lot of times when we talk on a podcast, we talk about, 4 things you'll regret in retirement, or for instance, we had a great series on cognitive biases and logical fallacies. And those are kind of, fun, you learn, but it's also kind of negative. And I got to think to myself, well, what are the things that you should do? What are the things that you need to pat yourself on the back for? And so these are 4 habits. These are 4 paradigms, perhaps, that a retiree, whether you are saving towards retirement or you just started to retire and you're just entering it, these are 4 habits, 4 paradigms that I want you to think about moving forward. So having said that, let's get started.
All right.
Habit number 1 that I see time and time again from highly effective retirees is, drum roll please, accountability. Accountability. Now that doesn't sound very fun, does it? Accountability.
No, not as much.
No, not so much. Not so much. In fact, it's one of those kind of things where I spent a good amount of money where I hired for 3 months. I hired a business coach to help me, as they say, take it to the next level, And what my business coach did is he formed teams of everyone who had signed up for his coaching over a 3-month period, 2 by 2. And my team member was a guy named George, and the job of George was every morning at a predetermined time, I think it was like 7:30 a.m., we would check in and say, did you do yesterday what you said you were going to do? And secondly, what are you going to do today? And what ended up happening was it ended up changing those 3 months completely. And because I knew, hey, for instance, one of the goals, roles and goals. So it was in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You're the role as a father, your role as a business owner, your role is a, good citizen. And so from each of those roles, you'd come up with goals. And one of them would be health and fitness. Another goal would be, I want to achieve this in my business. As a father or as a husband, I want to do this. And if you said you're going to do it and you didn't do it, I would find myself at 9 p.m. scrambling, saying, wait a minute. I said I was going to do in this particular case.
I got to talk to George. All right. I got to talk to George in the morning.
Exactly. I have to do something. And it completely changed the way I saw myself and the way I saw my day and the way my priorities came out. And if you look at it, it's a good thing to have accountability. We are social creatures. And when I say accountability, I'm not talking about, the IRS for your taxes or the police officer for your driving habits. Okay. I'm not talking about the negative, don't do this, don't do that. I'm talking about the positive. Having a community around you of people, a group of people, surrounding yourself with great folks. A good example of this would be, you're going to find that and maybe it's just me, but if I had not met my wife and got married, I probably would still be using egg crates to, as my library shelf, right? Yep. Remember how you lived when you were in high school and college?
Yeah, cinder blocks and 2x4s are wonderful.
Exactly. Cinder blocks and 2x4s. I think it was Andrew Jackson who said if it weren't for women, we would be savage beasts. And by the way, he was a bit of a savage beast anyways, like he was a wild man. And he said he would be even worse if it weren't for his wife. My recommendation then is to do that in your life, but also to do it with your financial life. hiring a fiduciary to hold you accountable to the goals that you said you were going to do, and then at different, way markers, at different milestones to say, hey, how are we doing? Are we doing what we said we're going to do? And then also, too, to challenge your thinking, because a lot of times our decision-making processes, as we've learned before from previous podcasts about logical fallacies and so forth, sometimes they're not really that logical, and sometimes our thoughts, we need a sounding board.
Oh, yeah.
So habit number 1 is accountability. Habit number 2 is automation. When it comes to your financial life, my recommendation, at least what I see out there, is when people are doing a great job and really just crushing retirement, and whether it's preparing for retirement or living in retirement, whether it's saving or spending, they don't use willpower, they don't use brain power, they use automation. They create a habit. And there's a little bit of brain science behind this. There's a book called Willpower. It's like, I don't know, on my shelf here. I'll have to look it up for you in a second. But what the book states is that willpower is like a muscle, and it can get fatigued.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you and I both know that brain power is the same way. If you go and you're trying to study for a test and you try to cram the day before, there's just so much that you can do. And as we get older, remembering things, your brain gets full, and after a while you start forgetting, hey, did I do this? Did I do that? And that's why when it comes to your finances, don't use willpower, don't use brain power, use automation. And obviously we live in a time right now where automation is really very easy, but it takes that initial willpower to automate. So you take your willpower, you take your brain power, you combine the two, and you automate. When it comes to saving, as you are climbing that mountain to retirement, as you are putting money away, as you are accumulating, obviously one of the ways you can automate is to automatically contribute, whether it be your 401k or an investment plan that you've set up with your financial advisor. Make it happen automatically. If you don't have the money, when people come to me, they talk about a budget, I tell them, listen, budgets are fantastic and we can get granular as you'd like. But ultimately, the key to budgeting, and budgeting in a way for saving for retirement, is simply to not have the money to spend on your budget because you've already put it into your 401k or into some type of retirement vehicle. And that's automated. It's just, hey, we've got this much money that came out of my paycheck, or that is left after paying taxes and paying for all of my benefits, and now I'm going to put money into my retirement, and I'm going to live off the rest of it. And also, too, if you're in retirement, automating things is very important. When it comes to taxes, paying your taxes, obviously, it makes a lot of sense to automate your taxes. If you're taking a withdrawal from your IRA, automatically withhold your 10 or your 20%. Do it automatically. Don't use your willpower to save for taxes. Don't use your brain power to compute it somewhere off ledger, saying, hey, here's how much I'm going to owe. Do it automatically. RMDs. When you get into retirement, a lot of folks, what they like to do is, if they don't need their RMD, they like to postpone taking their RMD until November or December. And what I've noticed is I've noticed that that's a little bit of playing with fire. And we could probably have a whole episode on the pros and the cons. But what they want to do is they want their IRA to grow all year. They've got to take money out for their RMD, and so they'll November or December take their money out. Well, my concern with that is that's a kind of like market timing in reverse. I would rather my clients take their money out on a monthly basis, paying their RMD as they go. And that way they're dollar cost averaging. If the market goes up, well, then they're going to wish they had stayed in until December and took it all in one big chunk. But if the market goes down, then they did the better thing because they smoothed out that withdrawal over a year's time. Either way, don't use your willpower in retirement. Don't use your brain power. Automate everything. And that requires sitting down and having a plan, right? Accountability and automation both happen better when you've got a plan and you are having a game plan when you are preparing or you're in retirement. The third of the 4 habits of highly effective retirees is lifelong learning. Now, I want you to think back for just a second here, and I want you to think about what high school was like for you, right? So for me, when I graduated from high school, I had a truck. It was actually my dad's truck. It was a Toyota, and it was a 4-wheel drive, and it was stick shift, right? We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the interweb machine. We didn't have podcasts. Think of all the changes that have happened since I graduated in high school in 1992. What's interesting about it is now you look and say, oh, well, how many changes have happened just in the last 10 years? How many changes have happened in the last 2? There's a thing called Moore's Law. And Moore's Law really applies to microchips and transistor capacity. But there was a guy by the name of Moore, and he came up with a law. And it really isn't a scientific law. It's more of an axiom that says capacity of technology doubles every 2 years. And if you look around you, it's really true. If we go back 10 years ago, the kind of internet access that I had was maybe not 10 years ago. Let's go back to 15 years ago. I was using the dial-up. That sound that it used to make. Yeah. And if you had 56K, your friends were coming over because they were just amazed by 56K download speeds. And then it became what we have today, where you and I are able to communicate, look at videos of each other over the internet. And in fact, my phone system here at the office is 100%. Well, the reason I bring that up is because I am constantly challenged in an active business to constantly learn, even just when it comes to technology. But when it comes to your finances, it's exactly the same way. The tax code changes every 4-8 years. The what's happening in the economy is constantly in flux. So my recommendation that the people that I see getting the most joy out of their financial plans, whether it's approaching retirement or in retirement, are people who have an attitude, who have a habit of lifelong learning. They may be working, they may not be working, doesn't matter. They're constantly trying to learn. One of the things I did for my dad once is I forwarded him a video on YouTube. It was like a documentary or an educational video. And now he is absolutely addicted to YouTube. And he has a question, and he's like, I'll go to YouTube. And I really admire my father for that. He definitely has this attitude of lifelong learning. And then my brother the other day, funny story, his air conditioning quit. We were talking about how you and I are built for air conditioning. Some people are built for speed. I'm built for comfort. So my his air conditioning didn't work. And he's like, I got to figure this out. So he Googles, YouTube's how to fix your air conditioning. He diagnoses it. He basically, long story short, saved himself about $2,000 in repairs because he was able to figure it out thanks to an attitude of lifelong learning.
Yep.
And if you're going into retirement, that's the key. That's the attitude to have. It'll make your financial plan work. It'll make life better, and it may actually save you some money, apparently, on your air conditioning expenses.
Well, that's what I've heard. Yeah, that's the rumor on the street.
Exactly.
So, but here, Ray, I want to step in real quick because it's so funny. These couple of things that you've already spoken about, they really do tie together well. So lifelong learning in retirement is fantastic. Whatever you want to learn, but the beauty of it is you should know about finances. You should know that tax laws are changing, but you shouldn't have to know all the ins and outs of those tax laws. You shouldn't have to know all the ins and outs of what the market's doing, because if you automate those types of things to somebody you trust, because we hear it's not just for retirement. If you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that's always been good sage advice, right? You surround yourself with people that are smarter than you because you become smarter by learning from them and their wisdom, so on and so forth. How about you surround yourself with people that know how to do things that you don't, right? So maybe you have a buddy who does know a lot about air conditioning. You get some of the stuff off of YouTube and you invite him over for pizza and beer and say, hey, could you help me figure this out? And boom, you guys have it, and you're saving tons of money. But if you have an advisor like yourself or an accountant that you trust and you're surrounding yourself with those types of people, it leaves you more time to do some lifelong learning that is more enjoyable to you. Maybe you like to do more with woodwork. And so YouTube is filled with those. I mean, I love watching that kind of stuff, just like your dad. I learned so much from YouTube. But I think those go in really well because you have that accountability because somebody's watching over your stuff. It's automated because you've trusted these advisors to do this. Still learn about it so you can have that conversation, but it doesn't mean you have to have a college degree in finance, and accounting. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I meet a lot of folks. Well, first of all, I'm in the finance world. I've been doing this for a long time, and the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. the more I realize that I have to look to other experts on their particular specialties, and I have to learn from them.
Yes.
And so one of the keys is to, when it comes to learning, is to learn what you don't know and learn when you're out of your depth. Because I think perhaps the biggest concern that I have is when people think, hey, I got this. I got this investing thing. I got this retirement thing. I figured out, how hard can Social Security timing be? And when you approach things like that without that almost a humility, it takes a humility to say, I'm going to be a lifelong learner. But then also, too, self-confidence to say, hey, I may not be the expert, but I'm going to know enough. I'm going to know enough to know where I am on this map. And it's a great attitude to have, and it makes for a great retirement. And then, of course, too, retirement finally does come to an end. So our fourth habit of highly successful retirees is legacy. And having a legacy mindset and planning for your legacy now is where I see people. And obviously, it sounds like, Ray, well, you're going to talk about wills and estates, boring. Yeah, that's important. Where are you going to leave, who are you going to leave your money to, and so forth. But I'm not really talking about that. When it comes to a legacy mindset, I would say that you got to have, you got to live your life beginning with the end in mind. You need to begin with your why. You got to begin with, hey, why am I here? What's my purpose? What am I doing? And when you find that, and I'm not going to take time now to help everybody figure out what their why in life is, but I will tell you that one of the most powerful exercises I've ever done, this was actually at an executive retreat, is they had everybody write out your tombstone, write out your eulogy. And that's, I think, actually from the book Stephen Covey. He talks about the, what will they say at your funeral? And it sounds kind of morbid at first, but then you get to thinking, what will they say? And once you come up with the script, you can reverse engineer your life. And that's what a legacy is about. Your financial legacy, your family legacy, your personal legacy.
Yes.
You and I were talking before we hit the record button, and we were talking about, you've got a trip coming up, right?
Yes, sir.
So you've got this trip, you're going to be going internationally, and it's something that you've planned for a while. And as I recall, it's coming up in, let's say, 45 days from now. You probably know exactly to the day, 30 days.
My wife does. I'm like,
right, exactly.
It's next month. That's
What happens to you when you have a trip like that planned? Well, what I've noticed is when you've got a trip like that planned, it adds a little bit of a pop in your step because you're okay working a little extra hard. You're okay scratching these things off your to-do list because there's this reward at the end. There's just something that you are actually excited about.
Yeah.
And it happens every time. It's amazing. And it's like Zig Ziglar. I went and heard him speak a while back ago. It must have been a while back ago because I don't think he's with us anymore. And he talked about that. He talked about the difference between desserts and stressed is just the order of the letters. And of course, the joke is that's an acrostic, or what's the word where the letters can be mixed up? Not acrostic, but anyways, it's a device where it's the same word, stressed and desserts. And so what he said is you can take any amount of stress as long as you know there's a dessert at the end. And for the financial legacy, for your life legacy, if you'll look at your funeral, if you look at your eulogy as the end, then all of the other reverse engineering, all of the lifelong learning, all of the effort that it takes to automate your life, all of the uncomfortableness of getting an accountability partner, hiring fiduciaries to hold you accountable, it all you can take that stress because you've got this, what the end in mind is, and you've figured out your why.
Yes.
So accountability, automation, lifelong learning, and a legacy focus, those are the four habits of highly effective retirees. And you can kind of see how it all ties together, where if you have a financial plan and you've had that conversation, then it makes it easier for those four habits to work in concert with each other. They kind of flow a bit. And it's what I've seen time and time again. But don't take my word for it. If you're interested, give us a call and we can talk with you a little bit about how we put the pieces together and help those four habits become a reality in your life.
Yeah, I know you've done that with a lot of clients, Ray. And I want to go back and touch on just two things because a couple of things you said are very, very powerful. I think a lot of people, when they think of the word legacy, they can think of a statue out in front, in a park someplace, or their name on a building at college. And that's not what true legacy is, just like you said, talking about the eulogy. What do you want your grandkids to say about you? What do you want your great-grandchildren to say about you, feel about you, about your interactions and the things that you brought to the family, not monetarily necessarily, but your wisdom, your care, your love, your compassion, your acceptance, whatever it is. Those are the things you really want to strive for, because those are the things that are important. And going back to the eulogy, I just want to add one more caveat to what you said. I have done that with clients for years. As a coach and consultant, I love that exercise. And the one piece that I would say that I would encourage anybody who's listening to this, if you want to do that, be very detailed, exactly what you want your eulogy to say. That doesn't mean that's the one you're going to give somebody to read, but what would you like somebody to say about you? And then when you're done with that, and it has to be from third person because somebody else is reading it. I mean, you're dead, so you're not reading it yourself, but you've got to read it out loud to somebody. That's my encouragement to you. Find somebody that you trust, whether it's a spouse, a best friend, or somebody that you just know that you can trust, and ask them to do this with you. So you read it out loud to them, because it makes it more powerful. There's all sorts of studies on what we hear and what we read and what we look at, what we verbally say. And when you combine those things, so you're reading it off your paper, you're saying it out loud and speaking it with your mouth and hearing it in your own ears, there's so much more power there. And it's going to be emotional, just so you know. It's going to be very emotional. Most people have a hard time getting through the whole thing without some tears. But it really cements what you want. Just like Ray said, yeah, I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do.
Very, very much so. Very moving, and you don't forget it.
Not at all. All right. What else do we need to glean from today, Ray? I mean, did you give the phone number out where they can reach you?
Sure. Give us a call here at 321-280-9081 if you'd like to continue the conversation.
Ray, this is so important because, like you said, you got to begin with your why. Know what you want for the ending so that you can build that from right now till then. So again, thank you for your time, bud.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
All right. And thank you all for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Rey Descalso. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Ray comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And think right now, if you had somebody that you were going to choose to go through that exercise that we were talking about with, who would that be? And then just share this podcast with them. See what they think of the idea. It might turn out really, really well. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Privada Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Privada Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider for any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The following program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content. Advisory services offered through J.W. Cole Advisors Incorporated. Securities offered through J.W. Cole Financial Incorporated. Member IFNRA, SIPC. Privada Wealth Management is an unaffiliated entity from J.W. Cole Advisors and J.W. Cole Financial. The opinions expressed by Rey Descalso should not be construed as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. All economic and performance information is historical and not indicative of future results. Investing may involve the risk of loss of principal. Any tax advice on this show is not intended to be used by any person for the purpose of avoiding U.S. federal or state tax penalties that may be imposed on such person, and each listener should seek advice from their tax advisor or legal counsel on topics that arise from the show. Nothing should be construed as solicitation of an offer to buy securities. The preceding program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content.